This happened in 2018, back when I was living in a cramped rental house in Marlow, Ohio. I was 19, sharing the place with my older cousin Aaron while I tried to finish my first year of community college. I've always had sleep issues. Night terrors, sleep paralysis. The kind of stuff that makes you afraid to close your eyes. That week, I barely slept at all. Final exams were coming up, and I'd been up for nearly 2 days straight, living on cold coffee and whatever snacks Aaron left in the kitchen. By Thursday night, the house felt wrong. Not haunted, just off. The air felt stale, like the windows hadn't been opened in years. The hallway light outside my room flickered every few minutes, buzzing softly. I remember noticing the smell too. Something metallic, faint but sharp, like pennies rubbed between wet fingers. Around 3:10 a.m., I finally collapsed into bed. I don't remember falling asleep. I remember running. In the dream, I was inside a narrow building with yellowed walls and low ceilings. The rooms were laid out in a straight line, each one leading to the next. No windows, just doors. The carpet felt sticky under my bare feet. There was candy everywhere, wrapped sweets scattered across the floor, little piles of chocolate in the corners. It would have looked almost playful if it weren't for the sound. A child laughing, not loud, not sharp, just steady, like someone amused and trying not to be. It echoed from behind me, then above me, then somewhere close to my ear. Every time I turned around, the hallway stretched longer. The doors multiplied. "Stop," I remember saying. My voice sounded thin, swallowed by the walls. The laughter didn't change. At the end of the hall, there was a final door. Plain white. The handle was scratched like someone had clawed at it. The laughter grew louder as I reached for it. My hand was shaking so badly, I almost missed the knob. I opened the door, and I was staring at my own ceiling. I was in my bed. On my back, I couldn't move. The hallway light outside my room was still flickering. Buzz, pause, buzz. Then I heard it again, the same soft, steady laughter. Not in my head, in the room. My eyes slid toward the center of the bedroom. 4 people were standing there. A man, a woman, a teenage girl, a little boy. They were holding hands in a loose circle, facing my bed. Their clothes looked dated, like something from an old family photo. Their faces were too pale, almost gray. And their smiles, they weren't wide, not exaggerated, just wrong. Slightly too still, slightly too stretched. The boy tilted his head. The girl's shoulders twitched, like she was holding back a giggle. The pressure hit my chest then, heavy, crushing. I tried to lift my arm, to call for Aaron, but my body wouldn't respond. My fingers felt numb. My tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. The room felt colder. I could see my breath. The 4 of them didn't walk toward me. They slid, not fast, not dramatic. Just a slow, smooth shift across the floor, still holding hands. The smell of metal grew stronger. My ears started ringing. The little boy spoke first. "Wrong door," he said softly. I forced my body to move. I focused on my right hand, begging it to twitch. The figures were closer now. Close enough that I could see the cracks at the corners of their mouths. The girl's eyes weren't blinking. "Eli," the woman whispered. "That's my name." My arm finally jerked free. I lunged up in bed and threw my pillow at them. It passed through empty air and hit the dresser. The room was silent. No laughter, no figures. Just the buzzing hallway light. I sat there for a long time, shaking. When Aaron knocked on my door a few minutes later, asking why I'd yelled, I couldn't answer him properly. My throat felt raw. "Bad dream?" he asked. I nodded. In the morning, I found candy wrappers on my bedroom floor. 3 of them. I don't keep candy in my room. Aaron swore they weren't his. I told myself I must have brought them in earlier and forgotten. I told myself I was exhausted. That sleep paralysis can feel real. That stress does strange things to the brain. But here's the part I don't talk about. I don't remember falling asleep again after that. I don't remember the rest of the night at all. And sometimes, when I'm lying in bed now, years later, I'll hear that same quiet laughter, not coming from the room, from the hallway, like someone waiting for me to pick the right door this time. This was in 2023, in a small town called Briar Glen. My mom had been gone for 3 years by then. My dad, Aaron, said it was time we stopped living in the past. That's when he brought Marlene into our lives. She wasn't what I expected. She didn't try too hard, didn't act overly sweet, but something about her felt rehearsed, like she'd practiced being normal in front of a mirror. I have a younger sister, Lila, who's 9, and my little half-brother Noah, who just turned 3. Marlene moved into our house in early spring. The air still smelled damp from melting snow, and the basement never quite dried out. She said she liked the quiet here. The first strange thing was small. I came home from school one afternoon and found her standing in my dad's office. The light was off. She was just standing there. "Oh," she said when she noticed me. I was looking for a pen. She didn't have anything in her hands. Later that week, I saw her coming out of Lila's room while Lila was at a sleepover. The hallway light flickered overhead, humming softly. I asked what she was doing. "Making sure the window was locked," she said. It already was. I told my dad. He rubbed his face like he was tired of the conversation before it even started. "She's adjusting," he said. "You're not making this easy." Maybe I wasn't. A few days later, I came home early from track practice. I didn't text anyone. I just walked in quietly. The house felt colder than it should have. The kitchen lights were on, but the rest of the house was dim. Then I heard Noah crying, not fussy crying, not tired crying. It was sharp and desperate, like he couldn't breathe between sobs. And then her voice. "Stop it," she snapped. Low, angry, not loud but tight, like she was holding something back. "Just stop." I froze at the bottom of the stairs. There was a smell drifting from the kitchen, metallic, like old pennies. I stepped in and saw Noah strapped into his high chair, face red, tears streaking down his cheeks. Marlene was leaning close to him, both hands gripping the tray. Her knuckles were white. When she looked up at me, her expression didn't change right away. It was blank, empty. Then it shifted into a slow smile. "I didn't hear you come in." I unbuckled Noah myself. My fingers felt stiff. She didn't try to stop me. That night, Dad said he'd talk to her. I stayed in my room. The house was too quiet. Even the refrigerator seemed louder than usual. Sometime after midnight, I woke up. The room felt wrong. The air was heavy, like before a storm. I saw the shape near my closet, tall, still. I didn't move. My throat was dry. My phone was on the desk, too far away. The figure tilted its head slightly. Then it slipped out of my room without a sound. I waited, counted to 30. My legs were shaking when I stepped into the hallway. Dad's bedroom door clicked shut. I pushed it open. Dad was asleep on his side, facing the wall. Marlene was next to him, eyes open, wide, reflecting the faint glow from the streetlight outside. "She was in my room," I said. My voice came out thin. Marlene didn't blink. "I've been here all night," Dad stirred. "Evan, go back to bed." I stood there for a second too long. Something felt off. The closet door in their room was open. Inside, hanging from the knob, was my hoodie, the one I'd left on my bedroom floor. I don't remember walking back to my room. In the morning, the hoodie was gone from their closet. Dad said I must have moved it myself. Lila told me Marlene came into her room that night too, just for a minute, just to check on her. Dad says we're all adjusting. That grief does strange things to the mind. Sometimes I try to replay that night. The shape in my room, the way it moved, but there are gaps. Whole seconds missing. And lately, when I wake up in the dark, I'm not sure if the door was ever closed to begin with. Last night, I found dirt on my bedroom floor. Damp, cold, like it had been tracked in from outside. The windows were locked. And this morning, Dad asked me why I was standing in his room at 3 a.m, watching them sleep. I told him I wasn't. He looked at me for a long time before saying anything else. Marlene just smiled. It was October of 2018 when I drove my old Cherokee out to Black Elk Ridge in northern New Mexico. My sister Marisol had just gotten married, and I needed a few days away from people. I've always preferred being alone anyway. Less explaining, less pretending. Black Elk Ridge isn't marked on most maps. Just a web of rocky service roads twisting through pine forest. I drove until the sky turned bruised purple, then pulled off onto a narrow clearing, killed the engine. The silence settled in like a weight. I folded the back seats down and rolled out my sleeping bag. The air smelled damp, almost metallic, like rain on old pipes. It was colder than I expected. My breath fogged the inside of the glass. I kept the windows cracked a little for air. Big mistake? At first, it was normal night noise. Wind through needles. The faint tick of cooling metal from the engine. Something small moving through leaves. Then I heard laughter. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a short, quiet laugh. Like someone reacting to a private joke. I stayed still. Listened. Nothing. I told myself it was an animal. Coyotes can sound strange. Foxes, too. I even let out a small laugh of my own, like I'd proven something. Then it came again. Closer. This time there were words under it. Soft. Almost swallowed by the wind. I pushed up on my elbows and looked out the back window. My headlights were off. The forest was just layers of shadow. I couldn't see 10 feet past the Jeep. "Hello?" I called, immediately hating that I had. For a few seconds, only the wind answered. Then, from somewhere behind the Jeep, clear and calm, "I see you." The voice wasn't rough or threatening. It sounded young. Maybe a woman. Maybe a kid. It was impossible to pin down. My hands went numb. I reached for my phone. No signal. Of course. I told myself it had to be another camper. Maybe someone messing with me. Maybe someone drunk. But who hikes into a pitch-black forest without a flashlight? I hadn't seen a single beam of light. Something brushed lightly against the back of the Jeep. Not a bang. More like fingertips sliding over glass. I stopped breathing. Another slow drag across the rear windshield. Then one hard knock. I scrambled forward, knees slipping on the sleeping bag, and dropped into the driver's seat. The key shook in my hand before the engine finally turned over. Headlights snapped on, flooding the trees behind me. There was no one there. Just trunks, rocks, the pale dust hanging in the air. I threw the Jeep into gear and started down the trail. A suspension jolted over stones, and I kept checking the rearview mirror. For a second, just one, I thought I saw someone walking between the trees. Not chasing, just keeping pace. Too smooth, too steady. Then the figure slipped behind a trunk and didn't come out the other side. I didn't slow down until I hit pavement 30 minutes later. Here's the part I don't like telling. When I got to a motel in Las Cruces and finally turned on the interior light, I saw something on the inside of the rear windshield. Not outside. Inside, 4 long streaks across the glass, as if someone had dragged their fingers through the thin layer of condensation. They started near where my head had been resting. I don't remember anyone touching the inside of that window. I don't remember moving back there after I climbed into the front seat, and sometimes when I try to replay it, there's a gap. A few minutes I can't quite account for. The voice saying, "I see you," feels closer than it should, like it wasn't coming from the trees. Marisol asked me once if I was sure I'd really been alone that night. I told her yes, but every now and then, when I'm driving at night and the windows fog up, I catch myself glancing in the rearview mirror, just to make sure there isn't someone already inside. I was half asleep when it happened. The crash ripped through my bedroom, like someone had slammed a fist against the wall. For a second, I couldn't breathe. The apartment in Red Hollow was always quiet at night. Too quiet. Even the old pipes usually kept their groaning to a minimum after midnight. I fumbled for the lamp on my nightstand. The bulb flickered twice before settling into a weak yellow glow. The air felt colder than it should have. Not winter cold, just drained. That's when I saw the empty space above my dresser. The photo of my grandmother wasn't there. The nail was still in the wall, crooked, unmoved. The frame lay face down on the hardwood floor. I didn't get up right away. I just stared at it, waiting. The apartment smelled faintly metallic, like dust and something old. I told myself it was nothing, just gravity. Cheap drywall. The building was built in the 70s. Still, my hands wouldn't stop shaking when I picked it up. The glass was cracked straight down the middle, splitting her face in two. My grandmother, Lucia. She'd passed 3 weeks ago in St. Marin's Hospital. Heart attack, sudden. I hadn't even made it in time to say goodbye. She never liked Noah. That's important. Noah and I met last fall, 2023, coffee shop on Main. He was quiet at first, careful with his words. My mom thought he seemed polite. My uncle barely noticed him, but my grandmother would watch him, not in an obvious way, just small things. Her eyes lingering a second too long. Once, after dinner, she pulled me into the kitchen and said, "He doesn't look at you when he says he loves you." I laughed it off. Later, I couldn't unsee it. Noah had a temper that didn't show up right away. It waited. It came out sideways, in tight jaws, in doors closing harder than necessary. In the way he'd grip my wrist when we argued. Not enough to bruise, just enough to remind me. The night I ended things the first time, he stood too close to me, not touching, just close enough that I could feel his breath. "I would never hurt you," he said. He didn't blink. After my grandmother died, the apartment felt different, quieter, like something had stepped out and left a hollow space behind. I hung her picture above the dresser so I could see her when I woke up. 2 weeks ago, Noah texted. I don't even remember deciding to answer. I just did. He was calm, softer. He said he'd been working on himself. Therapy, anger management. I wanted to believe him. Grief makes you reach for familiar things, even if they cut you. We started seeing each other again. No fights, no tension. He'd sit at the edge of my bed and talk about the future like it was already planned out. 3 nights ago, I told him we could try again, officially. That same night, the frame hit the floor. After I picked it up, I noticed something else. The backing of the frame had come loose. The cardboard flap bent outward, like someone had pried it open. The photo inside wasn't straight anymore. It was shifted. I slid it out carefully. My breath felt loud in the room. There was something written on the back. In pen, faded but clear enough. It wasn't my grandmother's handwriting. It said, "You know what he did." My stomach dropped. I told myself I must have written it. Maybe during the funeral week. Maybe I'd forgotten. Grief does strange things to memory. But I don't remember writing that. The next morning, I called Noah and told him I needed space. My voice sounded far away, like it wasn't mine. He went silent. Then he laughed. Not loud, not angry, just confused. "Who's been talking to you?" he asked. "No one," I said. There was a long pause on the line. I could hear him breathing. "You're not remembering things clearly lately," he said. "You know that, right?" I looked down at my wrist while he talked. There was a faint bruise there, yellowing at the edges. I don't remember how it got there. After I hung up, I put the photo back in the frame. I didn't fix the crack. I didn't fix the nail. I just set it on the dresser, leaning against the wall. I told myself it fell because the wall is uneven, because the building shifts at night, because old wood expands. Last night, I woke up again. No crash this time. Just the feeling that someone was standing at the end of my bed. The room was darker than it should have been. My lamp was off. I know I left it on. I didn't move. I couldn't. Slowly, I turned my head toward the dresser. The frame was back on the wall, hanging straight. The crack in the glass was gone, and my grandmother's face wasn't split in two anymore. Back in 2014, I was living alone in a basement unit in Ashford, a quiet town that shut down after 9 p.m. My name's Nolan. I was 22, fresh out of my mom's place after a messy argument I don't like talking about. The apartment sat under a split-level house owned by a retired couple who barely spoke to me. Upstairs lived a guy named Trevor. We nodded at each other. That was about it. Most nights were the same. I'd heat up something cheap, watch a movie, and let the silence stretch out around me. I liked horror films. They made the quiet feel earned. That night, I watched one I probably shouldn't have. The kind that leaves you checking reflections in dark windows. When it ended, the apartment felt smaller than usual, the air heavier. I turned off the TV and just listened. The fridge hummed. Pipes ticked inside the walls. Then something else, a soft scuff, not above me, not outside, inside. I told myself it was the building settling. Old houses make noises. I'd read that somewhere. Still, I sat up in bed and stared at my bedroom door. The hallway light was off. Only moonlight filtered through the living room window and stretched down the narrow hall, pale and thin. Another sound, like fabric brushing against drywall. My mouth went dry. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and stood. The floor felt colder than it should have. I don't remember deciding to open the door. I just remember my hand already on the knob. When the door creaked open, the hallway looked normal at first. Bathroom door shut, kitchen dark, living room window glowing faintly blue. Then I noticed the shape at the end of the hall. A woman. She stood near the kitchen counter, half in shadow, long hair hanging straight, one hand resting lightly on the wall, like she needed it to stay upright. I couldn't see her face clearly, but I knew she was looking at me. We just stood there. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. My chest felt tight, like I'd been holding my breath for too long. She took one small step backward, slow, careful. Her bare feet made no sound on the floor. I stumbled back into my room and slammed the door so hard a picture frame fell off the wall. I locked it, stood there, shaking, waiting for pounding, for shouting. Instead, I heard footsteps moving away from me. Quick, light, heading toward the stairwell that led up and out. Then the upstairs door slammed. Silence. I don't know how long I stayed in that room. My phone was in my hand, but I never dialed 911. I kept thinking maybe I imagined it. I'd just watched a horror movie. I'd been stressed, not sleeping much. When I finally stepped out, the apartment was empty, but the front door was unlocked. I was sure I'd locked it earlier. The next morning, I told the landlord. He made a call to Trevor upstairs. Later that afternoon, Trevor knocked on my door. He looked embarrassed, tired. "That was my ex," he said. "Her name's Mara. She's not handling things well." He told me she'd somehow gotten his address and must have entered through the side entrance, thinking my door led to his unit. He apologized more than once. promised it wouldn't happen again. I asked him what she wanted. He hesitated. She thinks I owe her something. He didn't explain. For a while, I tried to move on. I double-checked the locks, slept with a chair under the doorknob, told myself it was over. But sometimes, late at night, I'd wake up already sitting upright in bed, not from a noise, from the feeling that someone had been in the room a second ago. Once, I found a damp footprint near the kitchen sink. Small, bare. I convinced myself I'd stepped in water and tracked it around, even though I don't walk around barefoot. A week later, Trevor moved out. No warning. The landlord said it was personal reasons. The damp smell never really left. And here's the part that bothers me most. A few months after I moved out of that basement, I was unpacking a box and found something I didn't remember owning. A thin silver ring. I knew it was hers the moment I saw it. I don't know how I knew. I just did. It fit perfectly on my finger. Sometimes I try to remember her face clearly. I can't. It's like my mind slides off it. But I still remember the way she stood there, like she wasn't surprised to see me at all. It was October of 2018 when I drove my old Cherokee out to Black Elk Ridge in northern New Mexico. My sister Marisol had just gotten married, and I needed a few days away from people. I've always preferred being alone anyway. Less explaining, less pretending. Black Elk Ridge isn't marked on most maps. Just a web of rocky service roads twisting through pine forest. I drove until the sky turned bruised purple, then pulled off onto a narrow clearing, killed the engine. The silence settled in like a weight. I folded the back seats down and rolled out my sleeping bag. The air smelled damp, almost metallic, like rain on old pipes. It was colder than I expected. My breath fogged the inside of the glass. I kept the windows cracked a little for air. Big mistake? At first, it was normal night noise. Wind through needles. The faint tick of cooling metal from the engine. Something small moving through leaves. Then I heard laughter. Not loud, not dramatic, just a short, quiet laugh, like someone reacting to a private joke. I stayed still, listened. Nothing. I told myself it was an animal. Coyotes can sound strange. Foxes, too. I even let out a small laugh of my own, like I'd proven something. Then it came again, closer. This time there were words under it, soft, almost swallowed by the wind. I pushed up on my elbows and looked out the back window. My headlights were off. The forest was just layers of shadow. I couldn't see 10 feet past the Jeep. "Hello?" I called, immediately hating that I had. For a few seconds, only the wind answered. Then, from somewhere behind the Jeep, clear and calm, "I see you." The voice wasn't rough or threatening. It sounded young. Maybe a woman, maybe a kid. It was impossible to pin down. My hands went numb. I reached for my phone. No signal. Of course. I told myself it had to be another camper. Maybe someone messing with me. Maybe someone drunk. But who hikes into a pitch-black forest without a flashlight? I hadn't seen a single beam of light. Something brushed lightly against the back of the Jeep. Not a bang. More like fingertips sliding over glass. I stopped breathing. Another slow drag across the rear windshield. Then one hard knock. I scrambled forward, knees slipping on the sleeping bag, and dropped into the driver's seat. The key shook in my hand before the engine finally turned over. Headlights snapped on, flooding the trees behind me. There was no one there. Just trunks, rocks, the pale dust hanging in the air. I threw the Jeep into gear and started down the trail. A suspension jolted over stones, and I kept checking the rearview mirror. For a second, just one, I thought I saw someone walking between the trees. Not chasing, just keeping pace. Too smooth, too steady. Then the figure slipped behind a trunk and didn't come out the other side. I didn't slow down until I hit pavement 30 minutes later. Here's the part I don't like telling. When I got to a motel in Las Cruces and finally turned on the interior light, I saw something on the inside of the rear windshield. Not outside. Inside, 4 long streaks across the glass, as if someone had dragged their fingers through the thin layer of condensation. They started near where my head had been resting. I don't remember anyone touching the inside of that window. I don't remember moving back there after I climbed into the front seat, and sometimes when I try to replay it, there's a gap. A few minutes I can't quite account for. The voice saying, "I see you," feels closer than it should, like it wasn't coming from the trees. Marisol asked me once if I was sure I'd really been alone that night. I told her yes, but every now and then, when I'm driving at night and the windows fog up, I catch myself glancing in the rearview mirror, just to make sure there isn't someone already inside. It was February of 2022, and I was staying alone in my condo in Gulf Shores, Alabama. My sister Mara usually came down with me during the winter, but that year she'd stayed back in Nashville with her fiancé. So it was just me, a second-floor unit, and the Gulf air that always smelled faintly of salt and rust. I work remotely, so my days blurred together. Laptop open, sliding glass door cracked, the ocean somewhere in the dark beyond the parking lot. That night, a little after 10, I was on the balcony with my feet hooked over the railing. The complex was quiet in that way beach towns get during the off-season. Too quiet, no traffic, no music, just the hum of the streetlights and the soft knock of a loose sign down by the dumpsters. Then I heard it. Evan. Soft, like someone testing the sound of it. I froze. My hands hovered above the keyboard. I leaned over the railing. A man stood beside a parked sedan below. He wore a tank top despite the cold, and his baseball cap was turned backward. He wasn't waving. He was just staring up at me. "Yeah," he said calmly. "You." My throat felt dry. "Do I know you?" He smiled, but only with his mouth. His eyes didn't change. "Come down," he said. "I've got something you'll want to see." The way he said it made my stomach twist. Not aggressive, not loud, just certain. I stepped back inside and shut the sliding door. For a few seconds, nothing happened. No shouting, no footsteps. The silence pressed in on me. Even the air felt different. Warmer, stale. I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe he confused me for someone else. Maybe I'd imagined him saying my name. I hadn't been sleeping well lately. Then the knocking started. Not frantic, not wild. 3 slow, heavy knocks against my front door. I hadn't heard footsteps in the hall. My unit was on the 2nd floor. There was no elevator. The stairwell door always slammed when it opened. But he was there. "Evan," he called through the wood. His voice sounded closer now, almost affectionate. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I grabbed my phone but didn't dial. I don't know why. Another 3 knocks. The hallway light outside flickered, casting a thin bar of light under the door. I could see his shadow shifting. "You forgot something," he said. I hadn't gone anywhere. The handle rattled once, slowly, testing it. Then came a dragging sound, metal against wood. At first, I thought it was a key. Then the smell hit me, sharp, metallic, like old pennies. The sound deepened, a steady carving motion. Not rushed, patient. I finally shouted that I was calling the police. He laughed, but it sounded far away, like it was coming from down the stairwell instead of right outside. The scraping stopped. Silence again. I waited maybe 30 seconds before looking through the peephole. The hallway was empty. The light steady now. No shadow. When the police came, they found 4 deep gouges carved into the door. Long, deliberate cuts, not random. They asked if I knew anyone who'd want to scare me. I told them no. But later, lying in bed, I kept thinking about what he'd said. "You forgot something." Around 2 a.m., I got up to check the balcony. I don't remember deciding to. I just remember standing there in the dark. The parking lot was empty, except for a single car parked directly below my unit. A sedan. I don't own a sedan. But my keys were on the kitchen counter, exactly where I'd left them. In the morning, the car was gone. The door still has the marks. I never repaired them. Sometimes, when the building is quiet and the air smells metallic, I think I hear 3 slow knocks again. And sometimes, I wonder if I ever went downstairs that night, because there are moments I can't fully remember. And I'm not completely sure whose car that was. It was May 2017, Cedar Hollow, Ohio, a quiet place where nothing ever really happened. I was 21, home from community college, house-sitting while my older sister Marissa was on a cruise with her fiancé. My name's Tyler, and up until that week, the worst thing I'd ever done was get too drunk at a bonfire. The arrest wasn't supposed to be serious. A bar called the Lantern, a misunderstanding, a bouncer who didn't like my face. I remember hands on my shoulders, the smell of beer and sweat, my cheek pressed against cold pavement while someone read me my rights. They charged me with assault. I kept saying I didn't touch anyone. In the holding cell, there was a guy named Darius. Late 30s maybe, wire thin, bald. He had a faded tattoo of a crow on his neck, the ink bleeding into his skin like it was trying to escape. He asked what I was in for. "Nothing," I told him. He stared at me for a long time before nodding. "Nobody in here ever is." I talked too much that night. I remember that part clearly. I was angry, embarrassed. I told him about the house, about how Marissa trusted me with it, about how the neighborhood was safe, how the sliding glass door stuck if you didn't lift it just right. I don't remember telling him that last detail, but sometimes when I try to sleep, I hear myself saying it. When I got home after court, everything felt normal. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass. The neighbor's sprinkler ticked back and forth. I told myself it was over. That night, I left the windows open. It was humid. Around midnight, I heard gravel shift outside. Not loud, just a slow crunch. I froze on the couch. Then another step, closer to the side of the house. I muted the TV. The silence pressed in so hard my ears rang. The footsteps didn't hurry. They moved steady, like someone reading the place. I went from window to window, sliding them shut. The air changed as I did. The house felt smaller, warmer. When I reached the back door, I hesitated. The deck light switch was beside the frame. My hand hovered there for a second longer than it should have. I flipped it. 2 figures were standing near the railing. They didn't run right away. They just stood there, caught in the yellow light. One of them tilted his head slightly, like he was trying to see through the glass. It was Darius. Same crow tattoo, same thin shoulders. Then they bolted into the dark. I locked everything, checked it twice. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I told myself it made sense. Court records are public. My name isn't common. Anyone could have found the address, but something felt wrong. The sliding door was slightly open, just a half inch, enough that a thin draft slipped through. I could have sworn I locked it. I stepped onto the deck. The wood was damp, even though it hadn't rained. Near the railing, there were muddy prints, barefoot, not 2 sets, 1. I backed into the house and shut the door again. All day, I kept replaying the jail cell. Darius asking questions, me answering. I started to wonder if I'd said more than I remembered, if I'd exaggerated, if I'd lied about parts of that night at the Lantern. There's a gap in my memory between the bouncer grabbing me and the police arriving. A blank space. Sometimes I think I see Darius standing at the end of the street when I drive by. Sometimes I think it's just a shadow near the mailbox. I never told Marissa about any of it. Not the arrest, not the footsteps. Last week, she called and asked why the sliding door won't lock properly anymore. She said it looks like someone forced it at some point. I told her it must have been old. She went quiet for a second. Then she asked, very calmly, "Tyler, who else had a key?" It was October 2007. We just moved to a narrow, aging house in Millhaven, the kind with low ceilings and a basement that always smelled faintly damp no matter how much my stepfather cleaned it. I was 16, sitting cross-legged on my bedroom floor, trying to finish an essay before dinner. The house was quiet in that heavy way it gets before rain. "Caleb," her voice floated up from downstairs. I sighed. "Yeah?" No answer. I waited, pen hovering over the page. The heater kicked on with a dry click. Pipes shifted inside the walls. Then, "Caleb." Exactly the same. Same pitch, same length. No emotion behind it. Like someone pressing play. I stood up, already annoyed. Mom and I hadn't been getting along since the move. She'd left earlier to pick up my stepdad from work. I was sure of that. I'd watched her car pull out. I walked down the hallway. The air felt cooler near the staircase. The living room was empty. Kitchen lights off. "Mom?" From below me, clear and steady. "Caleb." The basement door was cracked open. A thin line of yellow light slipped out from the bottom, even though I knew I hadn't left the light on. The smell down there was stronger than usual. Damp concrete and something metallic, like old pennies. I stepped closer. The bulb at the top of the stairs flickered once, then held. "What are you doing down there?" I called. "Caleb." Same tone. Same rhythm. My mouth felt dry. I told myself she was teasing me. She liked jokes that went on too long. I flipped the switch and started down the stairs. Each step creaked under my weight. The basement light buzzed faintly. At the bottom, the room looked wrong in small ways I couldn't explain. A chair that had been against the wall now faced the stairs. A storage bin sat open, its lid leaning against the washer. No one was there. Then I saw the crawl space door at the far end of the room. It was wide open. That door was usually shut tight. My stepdad kept tools and old paint cans in there. You had to crouch and crawl to get inside. "Mom," I said again, softer this time. "Caleb." The voice came from inside the crawl space. I crouched down. The air near the opening felt colder. Not just cold enough that the hair on my arms lifted. "Are you messing with me?" Silence. Then, from deeper inside, "Caleb." I leaned forward and tried to see. It was pitch black past the first few feet. I could hear something else now. Not words. Just a faint, wet sort of shifting. Like someone adjusting their weight on dirt. My hands started shaking. I don't remember deciding to move. 1 second I was kneeling there. The next I was backing away, nearly tripping over the chair. The voice called my name again. But this time, it wasn't coming from the crawl space. It was right behind me. I spun around. The basement was empty. The bulb above me flickered twice, then steadied. The crawl space door creaked, just slightly, like it had been nudged. I ran upstairs and slammed the basement door so hard the frame rattled. I locked it. My fingers slipped on the knob. I grabbed my phone and called my mom. She answered over the sound of traffic. "What's up? Are you home?" "What? No. I'm still 5 minutes out." "Why?" My throat felt tight. I didn't know what to say that wouldn't make me sound crazy. Nothing, just hurry. When they got back, I told them everything. My stepdad rolled his eyes, but went down with me anyway. The basement looked normal. Chair back in place, storage bin closed. Crawl space door shut. He opened it and crawled halfway in. "There's nothing here," he called. "Just junk." But when he backed out, there was dirt on the knees of his jeans. Dark, damp dirt. We didn't have dirt down there, just concrete. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Around 2 in the morning, I heard my bedroom door open. Soft, careful. I kept my eyes closed. Footsteps crossed the room. Slow, bare. My mother's voice whispered near my ear. "Caleb." It sounded tired, real. I opened my eyes. The room was empty. In the hallway, I heard my mother's actual voice call from her bedroom. Half asleep and confused. "Caleb, why are you standing there?"